All right, Peter, high energy, high energy. I know you guys aren't doing well, but the people want you to have. Are we live, Leone?
Yeah, we're live, dude.
Oh, fuck, man. You caught me with my pre-show pep talk here. Welcome to the Tilt Space. Joe Holka is in New England. He's going to the Patriots Buccaneers game tonight. And Mike and I are here to sweat an epic day of games. Mike, tell him about all the plays that are just smashing and how we're on track to win hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's going really well. Last week after Joe couldn't come on the show, we did really well. We said, Joe, stay the fuck away. We're going to just crush again this week. And then I'm looking at lineups. Like, I'm going to bring one up here in a second. Let me see if I can find the lineup I want to bring up. Oh, yeah, this is the lineup I want to bring up. Let's share this. Look at this wasted 50 burger from Tyreek Hill. Icicles.
Just so absolutely. Is this our juke?
This is our worst team in the juke.
Yeah.
It is not going to finish well. It's going to be the lowest scoring Tyreek Hill team in history. But this was a week. I felt like last week I ran really pure on like all my stuff that was dead on the same lineup, and all my stuff that did well in the same lineup. This week was the exact opposite, in large part because I had Minnesota, Cleveland everywhere, and that game came in 30 points under the total, which, not the best.
Yeah. This week, it's rough, too, because it was one of those going into the build. We talked about it all week where everything felt pretty efficient. Everything was really spread out. There were no, direct levers to pull, like, even if you're like, I want to, fade David Montgomery. I mean, you're not jamming Allen Robinson in that game environment to try to get a leg up on that ownership. There just weren't a lot of obvious crowbar spots like that.
No, there weren't. And I really had a tough time on ownership. I felt good process wise that like the one thing I was like, all right, I don't know what's going to happen with some of these stacks. Like people are saying Odell's going to get really steamed. And, you were talking about all week, and you can see he 100% did. He got up to 25%, was one of the highest owned players. He was 40% in the Thunderdome, which I played. This is my team there, but I felt good that I was like, all right, people aren't going to play Chubb. They're not going to play Henderson. They're not going to play Barkley. They're not going to play JT. And I really focused on that at running back, and they hit. We have a team. We have a Chubb team that has a chance of cashing here on our main single entry in the 1500. We've been just running so poorly there. We got Barkley at 2% and Henderson at 4%. That's phenomenal for the upside that we had. But you can see, this was a Baker double. It just went awry. And then, so I felt good about what I did with running back, but the stacks just didn't hit. And then I did the same thing in the dome where it was like, all right, I won't play Odell there. I got great ownership on Chubb. Literally the only one with Chubb, only one with Antonio Gibson. Just stacked 2 games. The whole thesis behind Matt Ryan is if he hits like he does, your stack hits, right? There's no way it doesn't. Well, apparently there is a way, and that's 3 Cordarrelle Patterson touchdowns. Then you get people chirping at you, Peter, about how Mike Davis isn't scoring and Patterson is, even though Patterson scored 2 of those as a straight wide receiver. So it was a very tilting day. But definitely, I was a combination of run bad, but I was clearly on the wrong game with having Minnesota, Cleveland everywhere.
But at least you got AJ Green being the optimal Cardinals wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm taking a 13 in my best ball spots instead of a 9. So I'm +4 on some teams there. So that's real big.
Yeah. And we can do the what if stuff, for all of our plays. Odell had multiple red zone targets. He had another long touchdown that should have been if all of a sudden you're stacking, an additional 20, 25 points there. And then we're just as close to as in our Hurts stack team, we have Kelsey instead of Tyreek Hill. It's just sometimes you don't get the mix and match combinations right.
Yeah, we had look who decided to join us, Mr. Holka, who actually does have a sweat. He's at the Patriots game, Also, if my mic's messed up, let me know. Some people have been telling me my mic's been running super loud. I tried to lower the gain, but I'm like a bit of a boomer with this stuff.
How we doing, boys? Is it way too loud? I can mute myself in between.
It's pretty loud, but we want to hear you talk. Just give us a quick dispatch of what's going on.
So basically, my phone's about to die, so I wanted to jump in quick. This is what we're looking at.
Where's this at?
We're right here watching the game.
Yeah.
This is right in the stadium, literally. So, friend of the show,
Oh,
Chris Neville.
Look at who it is.
But how are we doing right now? Not so hot.
We're sweating 1 min cash in the juke. That's how it's going, Joe.
That's better than no min cashes.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have one good Tyreek team. That's basically the only good thing that happened.
Yeah, you've got a live FanDuel team. What do you have remaining on that team? I know you can't really show.
Aaron Jones and Daryl Henderson, but there's one person ahead of me that has them as well. So I can't get first, but I could get second. I think I'm like 10 points back, maybe.
Yeah. Joe, did you get the extra large brim on that hat?
Joe,
You have to.
as the production
I got this
guy,
giant forehead. I need it.
Go landscape, Joe. Come on, give the people what they want. You're a video production extraordinaire. Your screen is an auto adjust.
It did not work.
The chat is tilting your hat so hard right now, Holka.
What's wrong with the hat?
I think it's just the angle. It makes the hat look comically large.
I don't know why I can't go landscape. It's not working. No.
Don't worry. I don't need you to get in your head about your production value right now.
So we're gonna be okay. I don't know. I'm gonna see how much I can give away on Showdown, I guess.
How are you gonna play Showdown?
I can't go to this and not play like a Tom Brady MVP though, right?
I thought your phone was gonna die,
yeah,
Joe.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Are you lying to us to get out of?
9%.
9%. That's your Tom Brady captain exposure.
9% is my battery, guys.
Well, good luck, Joe. Hope you and Chris have fun. Post some pictures from the game for us.
Yeah, enjoy. That should be
We'll
great.
see you guys. I'm excited to get back to Tilt next week, guys. Late on, going.
It's been too long.
Good luck, Holga.
Establish the brim.
And then I was chatting with Gretch in our Discord DMs too. Plays like DJ Moore are tough, where it's a player you really like, projects really well, you love the play, and I think it's correct to just not play those guys when they're going to be chalk, but boy, does it sting when they do exactly what you want them to do.
Yep, it's the whole thing when we always joke around about good chalk versus bad chalk, and bad chalk is the players we don't like, their profiles or whatever, their age, and no, they're bad chalk. And then it's like DJ Moore, and we're like, no, that's good chalk. And so that's the temptation, but you do just have to play it straight like that. I had 0 DJ Moore this week. He was almost just scratched off from my player pool. As much as I love DJ Moore, I think he was my 4th or 3rd highest drafted player in best ball. Please don't arrest me. We all love DJ Moore, but you can't play him at that ownership.
Yeah, Dink had a really good leverage article on Established the Run this week too about why it pays to go contrarian. And you do a decision tree, and it's like weeks like last week when Cooper Kupp goes off, he didn't even give you a huge edge, but there's going to be weeks where you need the chalk, but even having DJ Moore, it didn't necessarily win you stuff. Obviously, if you didn't have him, it lost you stuff. But I think systematically, it's better to just kind of take your L on a week like this. So, the L on that, and
this was just at least I saw the L coming early. Once David Montgomery scored, and we're like, oh, it's gonna be a David Montgomery chalk smash week. Oh, Derrick Henry gets to overtime. Okay, this is a classic Derrick Henry smash during chalk week. Oh, DJ Moore, the other chalk we paid. It was just one of those weeks where I saw it coming a mile away. We weren't going to get there. And
the Henry overtime stuff, I was joking. I messaged you guys. I said, it's 4:45 and Derrick Henry's still getting carries. It was nuts. And then DJ, as good of a play as he was, you weren't totally buried without him until he scores, the garbage time touchdown really late. So
looks like we just had Freddie Swain touchdown here. I do actually have Freddie Swain in a Russ double on one of my single entry teams,
Heyo.
but I think it's done too.
Ooh, this game got to 21. So I think I missed the second score in that game. That's not a great spot for Lance. What was their middle touchdown?
Was it DK Metcalf or was there one in between there?
Oh, Russ had a run.
The
touchdown.
rush. Yeah. Okay.
I missed that.
Let's see. So KK10 asked a question that I was talking about with people in the Discord earlier today too about Lamar, because when I was running my stuff, like a Lamar Andrew Sutton, like kind of jumped out to me as looking pretty nice from a ceiling ownership perspective. But then, I'm looking at the ETR game environments, I'm looking at the total on that game, and I just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger on that. How do you handle that when you're getting guys with legit ceilings, but in non-great game environments?
Yeah, it's tough. I thought it was a really good large field tournament play where you're really getting outsized returns on the fact that it's going to come in at 3% Lamar. So I thought it was really good there. I didn't really consider it in my small field where I'm just thinking what's the benefit? Lamar really has to score a ton to run away with it. There's a lot of risk if the game doesn't go right. And it's tough to deal with those players for sure. I think at running back, I'm more likely to play those guys where it's okay, he's not going to be played and we know he's really good. Like Jonathan Taylor and Barkley this week. I feel I'm more into those running backs as one-offs in that situation. But then when I'm looking at stacks, I'm a little bit more cognizant of the pure game environment being, juicier and more likely to hit. I say that as I stack the game that finished 14-7, but
no, I get your point. In Najee would be a good example of that last week as a one-off running back where the game is still kind of gross, but he's just, capturing such an outsized portion of all the interactions from the team, all those targets, and you can get there even if the game doesn't pop off. Whereas when you're making bets on the whole game to pop off, then it gets tougher.
One thing I've been doing, I've really been stressing correlation in my lineups, but we do have this Deontay one-off that's potentially saving us. We went with the gal brain Deontay against the Packers D here. And, so far so good trying to salvage this min cash. Across my lineups though in general, I don't know how you feel, but this is what really hurts. I was this Kelsey Hardman team with JT and Hurts Devonta going off, but then we have Tyreek on another team, just run bad that we had those mixed up. But what I was going to say is I have not been punting tight end a lot. We did one Disley team, but on my teams, I played, I guess, Njoku. Njoku was a punt, but I played Njoku. I played Pitts. I played Kittle. I played, another Pitts. I wonder if I'm leaving some ceiling on the table. I'm always kind of trying to chase that 5K tight end upside, and tight end's just so bad that I wonder if I should be not on all my teams, but I really haven't punted much at all at tight end this year.
Yeah. There also haven't been a ton of great tight end punt spots this year.
Dawson Knox every week.
What is your take on Disley coming in at 20% there for the tight? Is that bad process play there as a one-off tip? Because this was one of the last lineups we put together. We knew we wanted a Tyreek Hill. We had to come down from Devonta Smith to Rager to make this fit. We love the ceiling that this lineup gave us at basically every spot other than Will Disley. I think I was maybe a little naive on the Disley ownership. I thought because of the Everett ambiguity, he would maybe come in more 10 to 12%. He's obviously 19%. Would you want that one back if we could get it?
So someone says Lance the Debo 76-yard touchdown. That would be just so sexy. I kind of thought this is where Disley was going to come in at. I think initially we had some San Francisco stuff here, and then we rearranged the lineup, and then that might have just kind of fallen through the cracks a little bit. But I'm just sort of, I don't know. I was just sort of I don't have any punt tight ends. We take one chalk punt tight end. I think we're fine. Our overall team was pretty low owned. I think it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just to let people know how we kind of go through the process of building these lineups is, all three of us have, mostly at this point, made our individual lineups, at least messed around with builds. And then we kind of spitball, all right, what stacks do you like? What games do you like? And we start kind of putting in some placeholders for stacks and stuff. And then with that Hurts one that you just had up there, we did want a Kelsey there. And then we're rounding out the other lineup. We're like, man, but we'd also really like a Tyreek Hill somewhere. Can we fit that? And it's just, I don't even know if you can beat yourself up on it. It's not like we're going to go back and be like, well, what if we put Tyreek Hill on this one? Yeah. Like, I don't know if there's any process that it's just being on the wrong side of mixing and matching.
Yeah. I think it was a week where I think we got running back stuff pretty right as far as what we played, with the exception of Dalvin, but then we didn't have the chalk running backs. They hit. We were on the wrong games overall. And then, like, the kicker was we didn't mix and match well, which is just, pure randomness. And you just got to take it. That Debo thing was a broken coverage, as much as I would love to be doing Lance victory laps. It was just a broken coverage, but it counts. I did get in Debo as a one-off in one spot late. You can see here, like, I caved and did a DAC team because I was like, I'm not like, I talked to you a lot. I was like, I have no idea where ownership's going to come in at. So I'm going to move one of these fields to a DAC team. But then I got cute and played Terrace instead of DJ Moore to, like, it's like, guys. So.
Yeah, but I kind of get that because I was looking at some of those builds too. I ended up running one DAC and like a $50 single entry, and I went down, I can't remember, from Lamb or Cooper to Schultz. Mm-hmm. And then because I felt like you did have to get one cheap guy in to make that work. So you could have gone down to Schultz and then gone up to GJ, but you couldn't. It was tough to both pay that price and eat all that chalk. So I think going down to Marshall definitely makes sense.
Yeah, you did need someone cheap somewhere. And that's where, going back to the Disley thing, like, I didn't absolutely hate the chalk Disley just because it was like, I'd rather play chalk Disley as a pure punt tight end than chalk, Westbrook, Ikine. And you can see in, like, some of these really high stakes, like, Westbrook ends up at 35%. Like, you can see where stuff condenses.
This is Empire Maker's cash game lineup, right?
Yeah, he usually, I'm assuming so, because he usually throws his cash, but like, you can see, like there were a lot of opportunities out there. You can see where stuff condenses. DJ Moore, 30%. I mean, like, this was a cash team, and it was a fine team. I'm just picking this team because I know it's got a lot of chalky players on it. But there are opportunities there. Like, but Henry got to 29. Like, I can't believe he got to 29 with the way that game was going.
Yeah. What's the first place team in the Game Changer?
In the $1,500 Game Changer, this is about, I think, a 200 person-ish field.
Oh, he really separated.
A Kirk Cousins. This is a fucking naked Kirk Cousins.
Wow. How do you arrive on a naked Kirk Cousins? And, like, oh my God, this is a 9-leg parlay.
Yeah, and man, Schultz didn't come in as much. This dude hit the Debo one off, Tyreek one off, Marquise Brown one off, and then the chalk running backs. Oh my God.
I would be fascinated to hear someone explain this team.
And he's running away with it with an 11 at QB.
Oh my God. This is nuts. I can't, other than the running backs, I can't, like, make heads or tails of any single move. And is there a single correlation? Is there a single?
There's zero correlation.
Not a single.
It's the 9-leg parlay.
It's a 9-leg parlay. God. Oh my goodness.
If we want to look at let's see this team, see if Agent's got a Russ double with Disley with Debo coming back.
Okay.
And Sermon coming back. So a real big game stack. Then hit Jamison Crowder at 1%. Really tough scene on Miles Sanders. This is actually a pretty nice team. I feel like there were so many running backs he could have played over Miles Sanders. Like, I would have done JT Colts on this team. Of course, what am I talking about? This dude could win, and all my teams aren't even cashing. But Miles Sanders would have a tough play.
I like this team a lot. Basically everything correlated except a one-off Jamison Crowder at 4,600 looks pretty sharp.
Oh yeah, Tyreek's correlated with Miles. Okay, so I dig that a little bit more.
Yeah, and Crowder's an interesting one because if Crowder's like $400 cheaper, he probably becomes like steamed chalk.
Yeah.
But at 46, everyone's just like, nah, I won't bother.
And I mean, Barrios seeing a lot of targets, and he's basically a better version of Barrios, and that's the role he's playing. So yeah, that's a pretty good team. This is where you just condense the things you get right. Like again, like my Thunderdome team, I kind of feel like this is actually a good way to play the Thunderdome, even though it's not going to work. I literally stacked 2 games, and it's just the one game stunk, and the other game I kind of ran a little bit bad in terms of how the fantasy points are distributed. But it doesn't take a ton.
Gibson could have had a monster game. He left with an injury, and McKissick had some big plays and that usage. What did McKissick have 2 straight goal line carries, and then Gibson came in on 3rd down? Like, what the hell is going on there?
McKissick had 3 straight carries. One of them was to get a first down, and then he had 1st and goal, 2nd and goal, and then 3rd and goal they brought in Gibson and threw the ball. So you're definitely tilted.
Goodness. Matt Ryan throwing 4 TDs to RBs is suboptimal. Shiv Vig earlier says, is this a tilt or a sweat chat? What do you think, Shiv? What do you think?
We're tilting, buddy.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit quicker of a show today, but that's how it goes. I don't have too many massive regrets from what we did with our lineups here. I was definitely pushing the kind of like the Zach Moss train. It was brutal. He dropped a pass in the end zone. I like the thesis of the play, and getting him at that ownership, that price as 2.5 touchdown favorites seemed like a nice bet. But you kind of see with this line here how it's a little harder for him to access a full ceiling.
Yeah, we had a really good ceiling, but like you said, if he catches a touchdown, that's another 8 points, and he scores 20. And on a week where pricing was pretty tight, in my opinion, having the 5K guy get 20 was a big deal. It's a CEH play from last week where CEH getting 20 was a huge deal. So someone says hopefully Mike Davis is 2,500 next week. Hopefully he's 8,500, and I don't even remotely consider him. Like that's the hope.
Yeah. Dollar cost averaging Mike Davis all the way down. DJ Moore is only 17% owned in the DK 100K to first and 50K. Do you consider 17% chalk or not? I consider 17% chalk. Do you?
I do, but I have such a small field brain that it's like a little harder for me to wrap my head around. 17% is kind of like what the problem with DJ Moore is. Like, how would you have played him, right? I mean, the only way that really works out is if you had a Dak double with Schultz and DJ Moore coming back, but I don't think you should be playing him as a one-off,
or you could probably do a mini. Like you could have had a DJ Moore with a Schultz or Jarwin at tight end.
Yeah, I guess so.
But then you're back to that dynamic we talk about where you're trying to thread the needle where there's just enough points for those guys to get there, but the overall game doesn't pop off.
Right. So I think if you did a Dallas double with DJ Moore, and as long as you made sure you got contrarian at running back, it was fine. Like, I'm not going to kill it, but I was worried he was going to come in even higher. So that's the other thing too, is you got like the range of outcomes on the projection on the ownership. He came in at 17%, but that was probably about his floor, right? Like there's almost no way, maybe his floor was like 15%, and he could have been 25.
Yeah, people are talking about Zeke and Darnold too. I guess that would have been if you did kind of the Darnold with DJ Moore and Marshall and brought it back with Zeke. I could see that also being like a fairly okay way to get.
Darnold was, because like if he was sub 6K, you could have justified a single, but I probably would have doubled that.
Yeah. Pull up KK's question from just a bit. He was asking about late swap on this, and I think people were asking me a lot about late swap on the show this morning, just because we've talked about it so much on the previous weeks. I thought this was a harder week to just be really open toward a lot of late swap options. And I would say for most of our lineups, we had some minis. In my personal stuff, I did run an Arizona game stack, but most of that was set up to be contrarian, to where there were only very few scenarios where our teams absolutely smashed, where we would have been like, all right, let's play, Cup, let's play Woods here. We were kind of always on the trajectory to stay contrarian late.
Yeah, I really didn't consider late swap much. If I did, it was like one-offs in San Francisco where I was like, yeah, it could be Sermon or Ayuk. If we hit the nuts early, it's Sermon. If we anything else, it's Ayuk. I think we had one team like that. But there just wasn't enough maneuverability, in my opinion, late to make it a. I mean, if you have the flexibility, you always want to use it. Like, consider how you start. But I wasn't consciously building teams around late swap like I had the previous 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a fine line, and that's what you talk a lot about. Finding what's my edge on this slate, and we mentioned late swap, but some slates, the late swap edge is going to be far more extreme than others. And I think that's what's fun, is viewing these slates through their own specific lens and trying to figure out, where is the edge? And I think we all agree heading into this week, it was very hard to find that specific edge.
It was. And kind of what I settled on was the contrarian running backs, which I think all went really well. It just the chalk went really well too there. And then game stacks, and I was just kind of on the wrong game stacks, or the mix and match wasn't right. I think but this was the hardest week I had building lineups. But honestly, at lock, when I saw my projected ownership, like, I was pretty happy across the board. Obviously, you had warned me about Odell. It did come in even higher than I hoped. I was hoping like steamed meant 15% at 25. That was the only one I really regretted, but it was also hard to be too mad about that, knowing that my Minnesota bringbacks were all mega low, because you can't have it both ways. You can't play the Minnesota game stack and not play anyone on Cleveland. So,
yeah, I mean, it is hard to think about, because I ended up running a Cardinals double stack with Rondell and Kirk, and then I played it kind of how you play.
Did you play the Cardinals leading yardage player in that?
I'm not. How old is he?
He's on the plus side of 30.
Oh, then probably not.
Okay, I was just curious.
And but I guess I'm trying to talk through the Odell thing, and I'm not needling you about Odell's ownership getting out of control, but like, I would say Odell was kind of similar to Woods in that regard, in which he like presented a really nice value and access to a game environment you liked. And it seemed like a lot of attacking that game environment hinged on Odell Beckham, right? Like, do you know what I mean? It felt like we were building almost around Odell. Like, it was never even a conversation of what would attacking this game without Odell look like.
Yeah. I mean, I did have in the Thunderdome Chubb with Thielen and Jefferson.
Okay.
There were some pivots off of it. I do think, I mean, again, you were 100% right. Like, you and Wiggins told me he was going to get steamed, and I at least adjusted a little bit, because like going into the week, I was like, I'm going to play all Odell. And I at least backed off a little bit, thanks to you guys. It was a tough week to figure out ownership, in my opinion. James Conner with another 2 TD game.
It would have been go ahead.
The Odell stuff, I don't know, man. I just didn't think people were going to play him as much as they did. And I was just wrong on that.
Yeah, I think I was just listening to shows throughout the week, and he was everyone was just talking about him. We're always trying to, one of the big things we wrestle with is the difference in ownership between the large field stuff and the small field contrarian. And I primarily consume GPP specific content. So I'm living within that kind of bubble too, of the people who play our style contests are all leaning contrarian and thinking a little bit differently than that. And so it is back to this whole thing, like levels on levels of the mainstream like content around the DFS plays is like really different. It's like two separate highway lanes where we're existing, and there are some parallels and it mirrors it a little bit, but then it can be really divergent.
Yeah, it's really hard to differentiate between, like you said, you're soaking in this GPP specific content from pretty sharp players. Is that gonna, like, how much is that gonna reflect the actual ownership? And we saw Odell get steamed a ton, but then like the Devonta Tyreek stuff was like
in check.
Yeah. Like Devonta got up to 11%, which was like higher than I wanted, but like fine. Tyreek was right where I thought he'd be, which was like really good, which is like he's got this ceiling. I mean, he's hit 50 points twice this year in 4 weeks. Like at 11%, low teens, give it to me, So, but then Odell goes, is he 12 to 15 or is he 25? And he's 25 and it hurts. That's been the real 2 straight weeks. That's been the toughest part for me, is like, where do things converge in the small field tournaments? And
yeah, and it was hard because, looking at the ETR game scores and, going through those games, everything was pointing towards Cleveland, Minnesota. Like even when you were adding stuff up from a ceiling and price perspective, it was the cheapest way to access a high ceiling game without a ton of ownership. So like, and I guess what I'm trying to talk through is like, were there ways to kind of similar to what you did with your Thunderdome lineup of kind of really slap ourselves on the face at the last minute and be like, we still love this game, but we got to find ways to get off Odell in the same way we were never going to consider playing DJ Moore.
Yeah, I think the difference between those two plays, in my opinion, well, one, like just a little bit of an L on, I did not foresee Odell being more owned than DJ Moore. Like I thought, at the very least, I thought Odell would be like the 4th highest owned wide receiver. So that's just a little bit of an L. But then when you look at the bringbacks on the Minnesota side, you got single digits on Jefferson. You got really low ownerships on Dalvin, really low ownerships on Thielen. Like, I think that's okay. If you were playing like DJ Moore, for example, like Cooper and Lamb were pretty high owned.
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz didn't come in as high as I expected, but like kind of thought he would carry some ownership too. So I feel like it's a little bit different where, like, I think it's easier to eat one higher ceiling chalky guy when your bringbacks that are correlated with him aren't going to be played a lot. Whereas if we knew Jefferson and Dalvin were going to be chalky, then it would have been easier to just say, well, let's just not play the game.
Right.
And then with Cleveland, it's tough too, because who are you going to play? Because
it was so hard. I kept looking. I was like, is there another non-tight end I can double stack with Baker? I did mess around with maybe going with Hunt and Odell, but I think that's also what kept it under owned though, right? Because sometimes we see these super clean double stacks. You see it a lot with Seattle and stuff. With Cleveland, it is not clean. Like, and that's why I think Odell caught so much ownership, is because people wanted access to this game and no one wants to like figure out Chubb versus Hunt. No one wants to figure out a 3-way tight end committee. And so everyone's just like, fine, I'll play Odell.
Yeah. And so it is a good, like, was it a bad play or not? I think it was clearly a bad play if you didn't bring back Minnesota stuff, right? Like, I mean, because the whole idea is like Minnesota was under owned. Like that was your leverage. And Odell was just like, in theory, good play in a vacuum. What was tough for me was, and I'll take the L on this, is like the guy that's like really charging our projections at ETR, but we really had Cleveland's passing game projecting better than anyone else's. And that was like in the back of my mind, like, are people really going to play that much Odell? Like everywhere I look, we're projecting Odell for more. But I guess people did get on the Odell train, regardless of him not projecting that well outside of at ETR. And the game just was bad from the beginning. Baker stunk. He blew a bunch of plays. This Cleveland D line has ruined fantasy for us 2 weeks in a row. the game just was. I mean, they scored 21 points in a game that had a 52.5 total.
Yeah, and there's just tilting stuff too. I mean, Chubb gets stuffed on a few goal lines or whatever, and then Kareem Hunt comes in and gets the touchdown on the ground. Just lots of kind of narrow misses like that on the guys that we were on. I felt really good. I don't, because you guys have flag plant trademarked, I didn't flag plant Justin Jefferson, but this morning on my show, I said Jefferson was by far my favorite play on the slate, and I felt really good about that. And it really, I mean, it wasn't rocket science. It was just loving that game. And he was literally the only wide receiver in the top 15 ceiling projections of wide receivers. Maybe I'm fudging that a little bit, top 12 or top 13, that had sub 10% ownership. And so then that just started to check all those boxes for me as far as game environment I like, ceiling at not high ownership. And he could have even have had a bigger day too. So I felt good about the Jefferson play.
Yeah, I mean, this team we have that might min cash, like this is a pretty good looking team. We just needed Moss to get in the end zone twice. We needed Chubb to get in there. It kind of stunk that Samuel and Pitts in a game where Heineke puts up 28, like you're really hoping you get more out of Samuel and Pitts. Like this is a pretty solid team, I think, that we made here.
Racif giving me shit in the chat because I did my show with Dink on my channel on Friday, and we built a lineup, and I said I want credit for putting Thielen in a dummy lineup that I probably won't use, but I need some points for using Thielen. We were talking about it this morning, and I ended up using Thielen in one of my all single entry lineups. You use Thielen in one. It's literally the same story every week. Jefferson projects slightly better, a little slightly higher ceiling, and the ownership is so similar that I still feel justified in just breaking my ties in favor of my favorite player of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard. The way I got to a Thielen share was just by playing both of them in a lineup where I was like, all right, I mean, my Thunderdome lineup was like, hey, Chubb breaks off a couple long runs and Kirk is just chucking the ball. And I mean, but like, it's really tough to play, especially if you're like, we're not making a ton of lineups. If you're MMEing, it's not hard to say, I'm going to play 25% Jefferson and 12% Thielen. Like that's not hard, but it's pretty hard when you're making 4 lineups. And it's like, do I play 2 Jefferson or do 1 Jefferson and 1 Thielen? Like those decisions are difficult.
Yeah, you need to play 10 Minnesota game stack so you can do 7 and 3. When you're only playing 4 lineups, then you're forced into 75-25 or 50-50.
Yeah, so that was tough.
The chat talking about Woods being dead. How about Robbie Anderson? Is Robbie Anderson dead?
Oh man, I feel like this week was a prove it week for a few players, and Robbie and Woods are 2 of them where it looks really bad. I thought Woods was going to have a really good game. He had that weird first week that I kind of wrote off. Then he had a second week 2. He had a shitload of targets. It just kind of the efficiency didn't work out. But now, I mean, we're at 4 weeks now in different ways. Same like Justin Fields too. It's like, okay, we had a game where they got overwhelmed on the O-line and he stunk. Now we have a game where they kind of dominated a team and he stunk. And you just start to, when guys start failing in lots of different ways, you start to get a little worried. Someone says Robbie had 11 targets, so I didn't even realize that.
Wow. Does that make it worse? How many catches did he have?
I don't know. That's a good question. Is that worse or better? I feel like it's better long-term, but it's definitely worse as far as the tilt for this week. I almost played Robbie on that team where I played Terrace. Not that I made much of it. Terrace sucked too, but
yeah. And as you pull this up, I mean, Nick says it in the chat. Nagy sat on the lead, and I'm way outside of my skis trying to talk about X's and O's and football guy stuff and coaches, but it does really seem, and I think I heard Silva say this on Establish the Show, that like Nagy is not playing to Justin Fields' strengths. He's not putting him in position to succeed, queuing up design runs, all the kind of stuff you want from a running quarterback. There's just no creativity in this offense.
Yeah, and looking at this Carolina box score, I like, how tilting is it though, Peter, that we get the DJ Moore touchdown regression the week we can't play him because of Chubb.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we love DJ Moore. I think we played him week 1 against the Jets, and we're huge fans. And then he's mega chalk, and that's the week he finally scores twice. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's how it goes. It's really how it goes. I am thankful. That's been one of the biggest. There are weeks like this where it backfires on you, but that was like one of the biggest traps I ever fell into with DFS a couple of years ago, was just constantly doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on my guys and not just being conscious of ownership, when it's like, it does not really matter, because I think over the long term, if we make that bet over and over of fading the chalk, we will profit more over the long run.
Yeah. And especially on players that we know are a little boomer bust, like Henry, for example. Like, he got there today, but I mean, no one played him week 2. He scored freaking 50 points. I shouldn't say no one played him, but he was like 6% or so. And then, Jonathan Taylor on the flip side, where it's like, he's going to have some big weeks. And Chubb's another one where I feel like I've run really bad on Chubb in general in the course of DFS, where he's killed me when I faded him. And you see the frustration with Chubb and his role, right? He only gets 1 target. He splits carries with Hunt. Hunt takes the goal line carries at times. But there's going to be weeks where Chubbs breaks 50-yard touchdown runs, and those weeks are going to be crazy. So you kind of just have to play these guys, as you said, like, just based on the ownership.
Yeah, it was a couple of guys in my Discord were talking about, I need to circle back with them and see if they did this, just doing kind of like a blind exercise of looking at the numbers and basically creating your player pool off of blind names, where you're literally just looking at those numbers, because I've mostly simplified my process to look at ceiling, ownership, value, because I want to make sure I'm not missing any extreme values from a points per dollar perspective. And then I like comparing it to sim results as well. But it's a simple screener. It's like 4 inputs. And then I can quickly look across and make a determination. And that's why I don't beat myself up over the Jefferson or Thielen, because I literally compare those 2 guys right next to each other, and I'm not seeing a ton of difference. Same today with Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. And maybe I need to throw AJ Green into this screener. I didn't even include him. But when it's that close, I do feel like you can just pick your favorite.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think on the AJ Green thing, I do think in a 1-week sample, fucking Stafford runs for a touchdown. I was really hoping he was going to be down at the 1.
Oh, we need some Hender. Yeah.
In a 1-week sample, like, when guys have their roles, like, they're fine. Like, it's hard to, like, I don't know. Like over the course of this season, you don't expect AJ Green to be up there with Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. But 1 week, when he's playing the most snaps out of them, it could happen. But the other thing that's difficult, you mentioned your process, which I think is a really good process. The difficult part for me the last 2 weeks has been ownership's been kind of spread, and it's been tough to know where it goes in small field. Like, we had weeks last year where, like, we knew we were fading guys at 40%, and it was so easy. Oh, Stafford was short.
Stafford's short.
And and stuffed on a QB sneak.
And that's I recommend too for you guys. And I have my own screener where I'm pulling in stuff, but you can do this so easily with the ETR projections. Now that ETR has ceiling projections, you can go into the main slate projections. You just sort by ceiling, and then you could look right over at the ownership tab and see who has a ceiling that's not getting owned. And this week it was so tough because at almost every single position, all the top ceiling guys had fairly even ownership. And it's like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. And I'm going to run the R squared on our projected ownership, which is for the milli, which is tough, but
can we get a Darrell Henderson carry?
No, we can't. They just threw an incomplete pass though. So we're still, like, technically live, but I'm almost looking forward to the bye weeks. So I think that plays better for the way we play. Like, I think stuff will get more condensed. I think that's better for how we play. It's tough. Like, the flip side of having no bye weeks is we can get guys like JT and Bart. I mean, I got Barkley at 1% in some stuff.
What happened? So that ownership confused me because I thought the narrative was shifting in his direction. We see him go off on Thursday night football against Washington a few weeks ago. Everyone's like, all right, I'm feeling good about it. And then he delivers last week. Like, he gets the full usage and it's like, okay, he's back to where he was. And then no one wanted to play him this week at 6,700. What happened there?
Yeah, I think people maybe overreacted to the game environment, but also there were just so, I mean, once you got Sermon, I was like, this, when the Sermon play became clearer with Mitchell being ruled out this morning, it was just like people are playing Montgomery, people are playing Swift, people are playing Henry, people might play a little bit of Gibbs. Like there were just too many guys, and he just wasn't going to be played. It was kind of, and same thing with Taylor. It was like, but I do see what you're saying with Barkley in particular, because the momentum was going his way. We basically saw everything we wanted to in terms of usage for Barkley last week. And additionally, we had Shepard ruled out. We had Slayton ruled out, and we thought the targets were going to get better.
Yeah. Should we power things down with a little look at Sunday Night Football? I saw some people hankering for a look ahead here. Do we have any Sunday Night Football takes?
Yeah, let me pull up. I'll bring in the screen in a sec. This is like the most narrative-driven Sunday Night Football show on state of all time, right?
It's insane. Yeah.
If only we had Gronk.
I know. No, Gronk is such a bummer. That was such a weird thing of how that transpired, where they're like, oh, Gronk's fine. He should be good to go. And then it was like, psych, he's out multiple weeks. That was such a weird reporting on that.
It was weird. We have our full projections in Cody's article up on ETR. I think Brady is such an enigma on these showdown slates, because in theory, you never want to captain a pocket quarterback because there's a receiver that's always going to do better. Brady kind of bends those rules a little bit because he throws 5 touchdowns to 5 different players. But I think Antonio Brown's a really good play after missing last week.
Yeah.
He's cheaper than Evans. He's cheaper than Godwin pretty dramatically. And the captain ownership projection's a lot lower. So that's probably my flag plant would be Antonio Brown.
If I'm getting I want to get a little spicy here. I'm trying to find him in your projections, and he's barely projected here. My hot take is like, I think Ramondre Stevenson is coming. I think Ramondre Stevenson is coming.
Oh yeah, we don't have him for much, but
I mean, I get why he wouldn't project well. You know, late scratch last week, Bolden and JJ Taylor come in after the fact. I don't know how much you want to read into the Ivan Fears comments, but he had some like pretty bullish comments on him where it seemed more like a personnel decision for why he wasn't active, for how they felt about it. And now obviously you remove James White from the equation. And as our buddy Pat Carrain, pounded the table for all offseason, like Ramondre has a good pass catching profile. And the fact that the team ran Brandon Bolden ahead of JJ Taylor makes me think they really don't trust Taylor. And Bolden's just a journeyman vet who I don't think is just going to hold down the job just because of pure inertia. And we've seen Ramondre just look great as both a rusher and a catcher in the preseason. To me, he's like the spicy upside play in this game, if you think the Pats are getting down and they don't just go back to Brandon Bolden.
Yeah, I do like it. It reminds me too, it's not totally the San Francisco 49ers situation last year, but there was a showdown slate where everyone played like River Carcraft, or who was that guy? Who was that slot guy? The white slot guy from San Francisco.
Oh,
Taylor.
The chat will let us know.
Trent. What was his name? But anyways, it was now I'm forgetting the guy who actually went off. Like the kick returner went off. It wasn't Krakoff. Krakoff was in that game, but it was like Trent Jones. I don't know. It was like something name like. But who was the guy who went nuts that game? Do you remember?
Someone says Taylor. Trent Taylor.
Trent Taylor was mega chalk.
Yeah.
And then the guy who was like the kick returner for San Francisco, that people didn't play nearly as much, and Richie James went absolutely nuts. But like there was a huge personnel change, and we were all guessing, and the market all guessed the same. And so this is kind of a similar thing with Stevenson, where He was inactive last week, so people are afraid to project him with a big role. But for all we know, he's going to have a bigger role than J.J. Taylor, who we're projecting at triple the ownership, So it does make a lot of sense when there's a lot of input volatility, right? Like people are assuming the same thing because they have nothing to go off of. And that's kind of when you want to take your stands, especially on showdown slates where it can be such an outsized return. And you don't even need like a nuts game from Ramondre. You just basically need him to be the best New England running back, which isn't that hard. Not even the best, but like the best of the non-Damian Harris guys.
What do you think of, do you have any takes on the Patriots pass game? Like I haven't devoted basically any mental energy to it throughout all of the DFS main slates.
Yeah, I know we've bet some unders on Kendrick Bourne and on Mac Jones, so I'm hoping that comes to fruition tonight where based on the matchup, they're probably going to throw a ton, right? Like everyone throws a ton against Tampa Bay. They're such stout in terms of their run defense, and their offense is so good that the combination of strategy and game script forces you to throw against them a bunch. But dude, it's been ugly. Jacoby Myers is like, what was this stat? Like anyone with more than 50 catches has a touchdown, and he's at like 100 catches and doesn't have a touchdown. That's pretty wild. I think he'll get most of the stuff there, but behind him, I don't know. I think Bourne had a ridiculous play last week, but he just doesn't seem like he's being targeted enough.
It actually is a pretty fun tournament showdown slate just because, like you mentioned, Tom Brady can throw touchdowns to 5 different guys. The New England distributions are all over the place with these wide receivers. Yeah, you always have the weird dynamics with both of these backfields. It would have been funner if we had Gio and James White playing tonight to really mix things up, but it does seem like a slate to pick your spots, and with so much volatility, taking the lower owned in some of these position groups.
OJ Howard or Cameron Brate, how much do you want to get hurt on OJ Howard?
This is the classic age model versus the PSM model, right?
Yeah, it's just, you look at Howard here, we're not projecting a ton from him. That's actually FanDuel, but I mean, I think Howard's a good play where people are going to be afraid to play him, but he's just so volatile.
Yeah.
Like people are going to play Brate because Brate's been getting more snaps. Brate's safer. But if Howard's the upside play.
Yep. All right, Leone, should we power this down and live to see another Sunday?
Yeah. I'm hoping we hang on to our min cash in the juke. That would actually, I think even with a tough week this week, we're still profitable through 4 weeks, which is nice. I will end with one last tilt. When you get killed on a week like this, Peter, it does bring to light the week before when you should have won more. I dropped from first to third on Miami scoring in overtime in that Raiders game. Our tilt space team in the juke finished top 50 in the Million Maker and didn't win a 200-man field in the juke. And it's not like huge money, but like that's a 12K swing on my team in the 777. That's a 10K swing on our team in the juke. And at the time, you're like, that stunk, but we still did really well. But then when you get smacked in the face and you're returning basically nothing, you're like, fuck, like that was our week. So that definitely stings. And
it re-emphasizes that point. You reference Dink's article, and everyone should go read that for his this strategy article from Friday about, what are the payoffs when you win? And because it is so hard to just, to use a Dink word, directionally win, have good lineups, you need to be getting paid off big time once you get close, because you are going to have more weeks like this where you're just getting dusted. And if you're playing a lot of chalk, you might be directionally right and yet not have the major payoffs with it. So it's just making sure you maximize it so you can have a few binks and, subsidize what is inevitable, and that's a bunch of losing weeks.
Yeah, and just having the emotional strength to just deal with, like, there's going to be weeks like this week where you just lose. Were there some mistakes made? Probably, but ultimately, when the chalk smashes and David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, and DJ Moore, and some of the games that we like just don't hit, like those weeks aren't for you, and you kind of just have to be able to accept that and move on and play it correctly the next time.
What time are you and Dink doing your weekly recap tomorrow?
I think we're doing it at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. You guys are really going to try to go head to head with my recap show. You guys are brutal. Yes, I was going to plug mine, but now you have to watch Dinks and Leone's, and then you can watch mine after on replay.
I think you watch ours after. I think ours is behind the paywall. So watch Peter's live, ask some questions, and then come check out.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We're gonna get Joe Holka back in the saddle next week, unless he jet sets off to some other fun experience and leaves us here on our own. But I have a feeling, like you said, Leone, we're heading into. Do we have bye weeks this week, or is it the following week?
I think we finally get them. Let me check.
It might be week 6. I can't remember.
God, I think I'm like looking forward to the bye weeks. I think that's better for me.
I know Silva's always looking forward to the bye weeks too. Lessen the load.
No bye weeks next week.
Okay, yeah, week 6. All right. As Spencer says in the chat, we're on to week 5. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, whether we are sweating or tilting. You guys are the best. Please subscribe to the ETR channel if you have not done that yet. Make sure you guys are watching Establish the Million, reading Drew Dinkmeyer's strategy article on Fridays. It will make you a better tournament player. And of course, if you need to get that showdown sweat in, Cody Main has you covered with the showdown breakdown. For Mike Leone, I'm Pete Overzet. We'll see you guys next Sunday.